Tourism officials in Bali are assuring travelers that they have no cause for worry after Indonesian parliament passed a bill that criminalizes premarital sex and cohabitation. The new criminal code takes effect in 3 years' time, and anyone who breaks the law faces a jail term of at least 6 months or a fine. And for some analysis on the new bill, we're joined by Andreas Harsono, Indonesia researcher at Human Rights Watch. Thank you very much, Mr. Andreas, for joining me. So there's been some backlash to this criminal code, with some suggesting that it seems almost like an afterthought to have a task force to educate people on this. The question is, what's possibly the government's driving factor to pass this very controversial bill now?
The substance of this law is seeing sex outside of marriage as a crime. The substance is seeing living together or cohabitation as a crime. That is the substance. But there are safeguards. It means that either your parent or your child or your spouse, they are the one who have the right, the power to report you to the police. But the substance is there. Why it is happening? It is simply because of growing religious conservatism in Indonesia. Over the last 20 years, we are seeing more and more Sharia-inspired regulation that discriminate women, LGBT people, as well as religious minorities in Indonesia.
So this country's law and human rights minister has said that it's not easy for a multicultural and multi-ethnic country to make a criminal code that can accommodate all interests. So then, if saying that, how realistic is it for authorities to enforce such a law for a country of this magnitude?
I know the minister well, Yasona Lawli. I like to argue with him. Look, there is not many countries in the world that is not multicultural, that is not multi-ethnic. The key is not accommodating all of these ethnic groups. The key is to meet international human rights standard. And this criminal code fail to meet international human rights standard.
So, Mr. Andreas, you say you know the minister quite well. You've had many conversations, I believe, on this topic. Then, is this more a political or is it a cultural or religious issue that we're talking about right now?
All of them. But the underlying issue is the growing conservatism in Indonesia. Yasona Lawli, of course, is not a conservative person. That's why he liked to complain how difficult it is. I told him, look, the key is to meet international standard. That's all. Look at the US, look at Singapore, look at Australia. They are all multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-whatever countries. And they are trying to meet international standard. Meanwhile, Indonesia does not. In fact, in terms of the blasphemy law is less and less countries that would like to enforce their own blasphemy law. In fact, many of them are scrapping the blasphemy law. Indonesia is the only country in the world now that expands the blasphemy law. Indonesia is the only country that introduced the apostasy law in this criminal code.
So how worried are you about this change of conservatism here then?
Oh, it was a sad day. Really sad. My first reaction when the parliament passed this toxic law, I want to apologize. As someone who had been working on this law for almost 2 decades, I feel like I'm failing my children, children's, and maybe the future generation, all of them, not only my families, of course. So we are failing. Someone like me has failed, and we need to apologize. I'm not involved, of course. I'm trying to make the law to meet international standard, but still, I'm a part of Indonesia. And as a researcher, human rights researcher, author, I think I am involved in this failure.
There is this law now in Indonesia, but it's also rather confusing. Does this law actually apply to foreigners? Should travelers to Indonesia now worry? There are a lot of foreigners to Bali.
This law applies to everyone: Singaporean, Australian, Indonesian, all nationalities, Bali, Jakarta. The thing is, this law cannot be broadly enforced. It is impossible to enforce this law broadly. There are millions of Indonesian couples who live together without legal marriage certificate, either because of their religion are not recognized, either bureaucratic reason, or either using customary mechanism to get married. The police or the authorities cannot arrest, let's say, 20, 30 million couples in Indonesia. But this law provides an avenue for extortion, for difficult families, parents having LGBT children and want their children to be quote unquote normal, and then use this mechanism to revenge or to raise their anger against their own children. So this is the danger of this law. It is toxic. It won't be enforced broadly. But if you have problems, then there are mechanisms to bring this very private matter into the public domain.
Well, indeed, it's looking that case. But thank you very much, Mr. Andreas Harsono, for sharing your insights, and he's Indonesia researcher at Human Rights Watch.